Entrepreneurial Law Leaders is the podcast dedicated to law firm owners and lawyers who are more than practitioners. They are entrepreneurs. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and solutions that help ambitious legal professionals scale their firms, lead with confidence, and invest wisely in growth. Here's your host, Will Palmer.
Welcome to episode 2. This is Will Palmer. Today we're going to talk about ditching safety, embracing authenticity, and unlocking true success in your legal career. What do those things all have in common? Well, we're going to talk to Derek Whitty as well, who advocates for lawyers to revolt, he says, and break free from traditional expectations. And he, through personal experience, talks about what being more authentic meant to be a greater leader, having more fulfillment, having more satisfied clients, and how authenticity in his law practice involved also aligning personal values with client service and prioritizing, wait for it, mission over money. And when you do that, usually more money actually follows. So let's look at what it means to be an authentic lawyer, doing what's scary, and finding more fulfillment inside of your legal career.
Are you playing it too safe in your legal career? It's a question a lot of lawyers are asking themselves these days.
Yeah.
That nagging feeling that you're stuck, maybe sacrificing a bit of your true self to fit the lawyer mold. We're diving deep into this question today using some fascinating articles and research.
It's definitely a timely question, for sure.
We're seeing a real shift in the workplace, right? With authenticity becoming more and more valued.
Absolutely.
But the legal profession, with all its traditions, its hierarchies, can sometimes feel, well, a bit at odds with that whole idea.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
One LinkedIn post we came across really captures this feeling. It talks about how lawyers feel this pressure, this expectation to conform, to stick to tradition, climb the ladder in a very specific way, and even to mirror their senior colleagues.
Right.
All while hiding their true freak flag, as the post puts it.
Interesting.
The post goes on to describe lawyers who, get this, they actually dread Mondays because they feel like they have to put on this lawyer facade, suppressing their true personality all day. It really makes you wonder, does hiding who you are actually lead to unhappiness in your career?
From my interview with Derek Whitty.
You know, we were all history and English and philosophy majors who didn't know what the hell to do. And someone told us to take the LSAT, and we just got on this conveyor belt. And somewhere along the way, we lost ourselves. And then you hit these moments, and you're like, wait a minute, you know, this isn't, I'm not happy doing this. And when you hit that pivotal moment, I think that's my audience and that's my experience.
The conveyor belt thing rings a bell to me. I think that's for a lot of people, but lawyers in particular. I feel like when I have colleagues that are attorneys and they hear somebody is considering law school, they almost laugh and say, do anything but that. Like there's like this overwhelming idea that my job is now to convince other people not to go to law school. And I don't know if you've felt that before. I just have seen that happen many times.
And I'll take it a step further and have myself and others, you know, when their kids have approached him and said, I want to go to law school, I'm going to talk you out of it. I think it comes from a very real place, and it's always brought up in a joking way, but the real place is what we expect out of a law career and what we get are so different. You know, and there's such dissonance because what we go into it and what law students go into it thinking, and the media and Hollywood bears some responsibility for this. And what it actually is so different. I think there's also a belief that it's going to get you power and agency, and it can. I don't want to say it can't, but really it's a service position. And when you're really doing it well, you actually realize how little power and agency you do have. And so these massive disappointments can create a letdown for people who choose it as a career. And I think that's why there are plenty of folks out there like, let me talk to you. Go do something real, is what they'll say. Like, Do something that matters. Create something. Don't be a lawyer. Lawyers, lawyers slice the pie. They don't grow it.
It sounds like you have these experiences that you have yourself, but then something changed in you where you use the word revolt, I think, at some place.
Yeah.
I like the word revolt a lot. Tell me what happened. What did you revolt? What was the thing that changed for you?
For me, it was my dad passing this year, and feeling how short life is, and that just sort of made it really clear to me how much I was doing because I thought that's what the world expected. I thought that's what a lawyer should do. That's what a good professional would act like, and all these things that I was trying to be something. And it was tiring, and I was tired, and it wasn't filling my cup. And so I said, I'm not going to try to meet your standard anymore. I got to figure out what I want. And honestly, the biggest unlock for me is that doesn't require you to stop being a lawyer. It doesn't, and in fact, it might actually make you better because clients hate lawyers who are lawyerly. I kind of knew that, but I didn't really realize how strong of a feeling that is. And throughout my career, I've had moments where I've had clients say, oh, I like talking to you. You're not like other lawyers. And I never thought about it. But since, La Revolt, I'll say, I've gotten even more feedback like, oh, thank you. This is so refreshing. I feel like I can communicate with you. It's not like most lawyers. And there's something about that we're hurting, and we're not even being effective at what we do. And it's got to be in some ways related to not bringing our true selves to the profession and trying to match up to some idea of it that isn't real.
The research on this is pretty clear, actually. Hiding who we are is both cognitively and emotionally draining.
Really?
It impacts not only our well-being, but also our performance.
So there's a real cost to this whole inauthenticity thing. But what can we do about it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Well, you said courage, and you're right. And, when we were talking earlier, you connected courage and happiness. And I think all I can do is encourage and be a cheerleader and say, you can live differently. It doesn't have to be like this, but you hold the key to your own jail cell in your pocket. Like, I don't know how to be the catalyst to set people free, but they don't have to live that way, and I'm sure of it. Maybe some practical advice would be take a day off, damn it, and think about that. Like, be with yourself a minute. Why are you so tired? Why are you so broken? Why are you so unfulfilled? I bet you have the answer. And then quit doing the same stuff over and over. Do something different.
One article we found, Bringing Authenticity to the Practice of Law, offers some practical advice. And it all starts with self-awareness, right?
Absolutely. Self-awareness is key. Understanding your own values, your priorities, what truly motivates you.
You need personal values and a mission, and your legal practice has to be aligned with that. And to be a happy lawyer, you need to be serving clients in a way that matches your values and your mission, and to matter that way. And if you do that, the doors will open. I believe it, and the money will come. And it's easy to say. Everyone's like, yeah, right. You say the money will come, but if you put the money first, ironically, everything else falls apart. But if you put your values and your service first, the doors open.
So how do you figure all that out?
The article uses a great analogy: preparing for a trial. Just as you would meticulously prepare your case, you need to know yourself inside and out. So ask yourself, what are your top priorities, both professionally and personally? What makes you tick? What are you passionate about?
I like that analogy. So it's like building a case for yourself, essentially. The article also talks about vulnerability, It even mentions this Texas lawyer who actually addressed potential jury bias against his Texasness right there in the courtroom.
Wow.
And guess what? It actually worked in his favor. But how can lawyers be vulnerable without appearing unprofessional? That seems tricky.
Well, I think it's about choosing the right moments and the right situations to reveal aspects of yourself that build trust.
So it's about being genuine, but strategically so.
Exactly.
Not about oversharing or being inappropriate, but about using vulnerability as a tool to connect with others. And the article emphasizes that, like any skill, it takes practice. You have to be willing to experiment and get feedback to refine your approach.
It's a process for sure, and there's actually some interesting research that ties into this. Studies using fMRI technology have actually shown that even when people are randomly assigned to groups, they very quickly develop in-group biases.
So even when the groups are completely arbitrary, we still gravitate toward those we see as similar to us.
That's fascinating. Yeah, and this highlights how deeply ingrained those biases really are. But if we connect this back to the legal field, I think it suggests that building a team culture around shared values can be incredibly powerful.
How so?
Well, when you have that foundation of common ground, it reduces the pressure on individuals to suppress their authentic selves in order to fit in.
That makes a lot of sense. A strong, values-driven culture can create a space where people feel safe to be themselves. Switching gears a bit, the article Embracing Authenticity in Law can be tricky. But it opens doors, offers a really interesting perspective. It uses this analogy of your authentic self as a soundtrack.
A soundtrack.
Yeah. You can adjust the volume or even choose which songs to play depending on the context. But isn't adjusting your behavior just another way of being inauthentic? That seems a little contradictory.
That's a great question, and I think it gets at the heart of what authenticity really means. It's not about being exactly the same in every situation. Adjusting your approach for different audiences is actually a form of social intelligence, not inauthenticity.
So it's about being aware of your audience and communicating in a way that resonates with them while still staying true to your core values.
Precisely. The key is finding that balance between adapting your communication style and remaining grounded in who you are at your core. Your values, your beliefs, your passions, those should remain constant.
This reminds me of something from the article, The Importance of Authenticity in the Legal Profession. It argues that authenticity isn't just about personal fulfillment. It can actually be a business advantage.
Interesting.
It talks about how clients are increasingly valuing transparency and genuine connection.
Yeah.
And how authentic leaders are seen as more trustworthy and relatable. But can authenticity really be a differentiator in such a competitive field like law?
I believe it can. Clients are more discerning than ever. They're not just looking for technical expertise, they're looking for lawyers they can trust, that they can connect with on a human level.
The article even gives an example of a family lawyer who's very upfront about their non-confrontational approach and values. And this transparency actually helps them attract clients who are aligned with that style.
That makes sense.
It leads to stronger relationships and better outcomes for everyone involved. So, circling back to our original question, are you playing it too safe? What we've seen from these sources is that authenticity isn't about throwing professionalism out the window. It's about bringing your whole self to the table in a way that feels genuine and aligns with your values.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot, where you can be both professional and authentic.
Exactly. And it's a journey, not like a destination. It takes self-awareness, the courage to be vulnerable, clearly communicating your values, and setting those healthy boundaries.
And it's worth noting that the legal profession itself is changing too,
Oh, really? How so?
There's a growing recognition that well-being and integrity are essential for lawyers, like if they actually want to thrive.
Yeah, I can see that.
We're seeing more and more emphasis on this, even in law schools and within firms themselves.
That's encouraging. So it's not just about individual effort.
Right.
It's about a broader shift in the whole culture of the profession.
Exactly. And the article, Authentic Lawyer, Can Lawyers Be Consistently Authentic?, really dives into this idea.
Oh, interesting. What does it say?
It argues that true authenticity in law means, it means upholding your oath and acting ethically.
Right.
Regardless of how you personally feel about a client or case.
So even if you don't personally agree with a client's position, you can still be authentic by representing them, like with full force, as long as it's within the bounds of the law, right?
Exactly. The author makes this really interesting comparison. They compare lawyers to chefs who are creating fusion cuisine.
Okay, nice thing.
They might blend elements from different culinary traditions, but they're still being authentic to their own creative vision.
I love that analogy. So it's not about having to like perfectly align with every client or cause you're representing. What matters is acting with integrity,
Right.
and upholding those professional standards.
Exactly. Authenticity doesn't mean you have to compromise your ethical obligations or professional standards. It's about finding that way to be true to yourself, but within those boundaries.
So then how do you actually bring like more of this authenticity into your everyday work as a lawyer?
Well, the article To Improve Law Firm Culture, Let Authenticity Fly actually offers some good insight on this. It basically emphasizes creating a work environment that encourages people to be themselves and connect genuinely.
So it's not just about like individual effort again, it's also about the culture of the firm or the organization you're in.
Absolutely. The article highlights the importance of things like, transparent leadership, open communication, and being willing to be vulnerable.
Okay.
But that has to sting from the top down.
I see.
It also suggests taking a look at your recruiting and onboarding, making sure those processes really show that the firm values authenticity.
It's fascinating to see how this whole idea of authenticity is becoming so important now, not just for individual lawyers, but for law firms as a whole.
Right. It's definitely reflecting how both lawyers and clients are, changing their expectations.
Yeah.
People are craving more genuine connections,
Makes sense.
and more meaning in their work. So they're looking for those organizations that actually value those things.
Now, what about people who say that big law can't ever be authentic,
Yeah.
There's this whole perception that it's all about cutthroat competition and conforming to this very specific high-pressure kind of mold.
I mean, that's a fair point, to be honest. There are some valid criticisms of how big law works and what it does to lawyers' well-being.
For sure.
But I think it's important to remember every workplace has its own culture, right?
Right.
And its own challenges. There are definitely people who find fulfillment and success in big law, and they still stay true to themselves.
Right.
And on the flip side, there are tons of lawyers who struggle with authenticity in small firms or even in solo practice.
That's true.
So I think it comes down to finding the right fit,
So it's not about the size of the firm.
Right.
It's about what fits you, your personality, your values.
Exactly. There was this one LinkedIn post we have, and it offers a super interesting take on this. It's by this lawyer who didn't actually make partner at a big law firm.
Oh, wow.
But they still credit that experience with launching their career and opening doors they never would have had otherwise.
That's great.
They talk about the challenges of big law for sure, but they also point out the valuable training and opportunities it gave them.
So it's not about like demonizing big law or any specific legal career path.
No, not at all.
It's about being honest with yourself about what you want and what you're willing to deal with,
Yeah.
And recognizing that your career might not go in a straight line, that it could take some twists and turns.
Absolutely. This lawyer, they went from big law to owning their own firm, to teaching at a law school, to in-house counsel at a tech company.
Wow, that's quite the journey.
It just shows you your career is a journey, not a finish line. And that whole authenticity thing is something you work on and get better at along the way.
You've got to break some stuff that you're holding dearly onto, and for some people it's, I'm going to leave the big firm and I'm going to just jump in the deep end and do this differently and be an alternative service provider, or maybe I'm going to help other lawyers and be a coach. But you got to break something to set yourself free. I think for some people, and not everyone, it does mean not being a lawyer anymore. And I celebrate and encourage those people, and that maybe is their journey. But you've got to break some stuff in your life to find who you really are in there.
There's not going to be one answer that fits everyone. What matters is that we're asking these questions and challenging ourselves to create a profession that supports, both excellence and well-being.
It really feels like we're at this turning point.
Yeah.
In the legal profession, I mean.
Right.
There's this growing awareness that things don't have to be this way.
Right.
That we don't have to sacrifice our well-being or who we are to be successful.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be having this conversation, that's for sure. And it's not just about changing the profession for the better. It's also about giving individual lawyers the power to create careers that are more fulfilling and authentic for them.
Exactly. So to wrap up this deep dive, let's shift our focus to you, the listener. If you're here listening to all this, you're probably already thinking about these things.
Yeah.
Maybe even feeling that tension between who you are and who you feel you should be as a lawyer.
And that's really the first step.
What is?
Awareness. Recognizing that you have a choice in how you show up,
In your legal career.
Okay.
So let's talk about what you can actually do.
Okay.
What are some concrete steps that lawyers can take to bring more authenticity into their work?
Well, like we talked about, that first step is self-awareness. Really take the time to think about your values, what your priorities are, what you're passionate about, what truly matters to you, both personally and professionally.
Right, because it's hard to be your true self if you don't even know what you stand for.
Exactly. And once you have a better sense of yourself, you can start figuring out how to align your work with those values.
How do you do that?
Maybe it means looking for opportunities where you can use your skills and talents in a way that feels more, genuine.
Okay.
Maybe it's setting boundaries, protecting your time and energy, or even just finding ways to let your personality come through more when you're interacting with colleagues and clients. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing.
In the articles we looked at, they had some really practical tips too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
One stressed how important clear communication is. Like being upfront with your clients about how you approach things, what you value, setting those expectations from the get-go.
Yeah, that transparency can make a huge difference. It helps you attract clients who are a good fit and sets you up for a relationship that feels authentic.
Another article talked about finding your people,
Oh yeah.
building relationships with colleagues who support you and encourage you to be yourself.
Having that sense of belonging, it can be so powerful. It gives you that safe space to be yourself.
Plus-
Talk about what you're struggling with, to celebrate your wins, all of it.
And I think sometimes we forget that even the small things matter.
They really do.
Choosing to be a little more vulnerable in a meeting or sharing a personal story that lets people see who you are. Even just saying no to something that doesn't align with your values, those little things can add up to a big shift over time.
Absolutely. And remember, authenticity is not about being perfect. It's about making progress, being willing to experiment, to mess up, to learn as you go.
So if it's a journey, what's one small step someone could take this week to turn up the volume on their unique soundtrack, so to speak, in their legal career, I mean?
Maybe it's having that honest conversation with a colleague you trust about what you're dealing with, or setting a boundary that protects your well-being, or even just taking a few minutes each day to reflect on what really matters to you and how you can bring more of that into your work.
Those are all great ideas. And you don't have to do any of this alone. There are so many resources out there to help. You could reach out to a mentor, join a professional organization, or even find a therapist or a coach who specializes in, lawyer well-being.
The legal profession needs you to be your authentic self. The world needs your talents, your perspective. It's unique,
So go out there and be your brilliant, authentic selves. This is your time to shine.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Entrepreneurial Law Leaders Podcast. For more resources and information, go to Growth Lab SEO. That's SEO, like search engine optimization, growthlabseo.com. This is Will Palmer signing off, wishing everyone greater success. Talk to you soon.